Throughout 2022 and 2023, we've seen many true crime cases solved. Sometimes these cases are solved by unexpected tips, and some are solved with DNA. Not every case is the same, and plenty of unsolved cases still desperately need to be solved. Number 5. 74-year-old Louis Charles, also known as L.C. Burroughs, started life in New York City. L.C. took to the big city life, and by adulthood, he landed a job at the Michael One restaurant close to Wall Street. All loved L.C., and his daughters later stated that he'd never met a stranger. His cooking skills cemented him as a staple in the community. But in the 1970s, L.C. decided it was time for a change. L.C., his wife, and his children packed their bags and moved to Millen, Georgia. L.C. and his family quickly settled into their new lives, and L.C. opened up a junkyard, something he'd always dreamt of. By 2013, L.C.'s junkyard business was steady and the community loved him. He was known to be extremely kind and always lent a helping hand to those in need, even if they couldn't pay. But not everyone awarded him the same kindness in return. Some in the community saw L.C. as weak, and people began stealing batteries from his junkyard. L.C. was concerned about this spate of thefts and debated whether to go to the police. His daughters and wife encouraged him, but he disappeared before the report could be filed. L.C. was seen for the last time at his junkyard in the 4500 block of Highway 23 South on September 26, 2013. That morning, he was on the phone with a friend as he was pulling into the junkyard. According to the friend, they heard L.C. arguing with someone in the distance before the call disconnected. When he failed to return home that evening, his family became worried. The following day, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations was called out to investigate. When they arrived at the junkyard, they found L.C.'s truck with the driver's side door open and the keys still in the ignition. There was no sign of L.C., and he's never been seen or heard from again. Investigators believe that L.C. likely met with foul play, and there's a $20,000 reward for information that leads to his whereabouts. Anyone with information is asked to contact Special Agent Barry Thompson of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation at 912-871-1121. Number 4. 50-year-old Rachel Marie Anthony was a beloved mother and grandmother who resided in Minnesota. By 2001, Rachel had been working at Ultimate Liquors in Pine River for over a year and progressing in her role. February 27th started like any other day for Rachel. She drove to the liquor store and prepared for a slow night ahead. By 10 p.m., Rachel had begun her usual close-down routine. Before finishing up, Rachel headed out into the 19-degree weather to start her car so that it would be nice and warm for her when she finished. Rachel never made it back into the store, and hours later, a passing patrol officer noticed Rachel's idling car and the Ultimate Liquors store still lit up. Concerned, the officer entered the store and found Rachel's car keys, coat, purse, and cigarettes still in the shop, but there was no sign of Rachel. Pine River is a tiny and tight-knit community of around 950 people, and everyone knows everyone. The officer on duty called for backup, and the investigation into Rachel's disappearance began. Officers found that nothing had been stolen from the shop and that Rachel's belongings were in their usual spots. The last transaction was made at 9:56 p.m., just 4 minutes before Rachel closed up. But there was something odd. This transaction was never completed. Rachel's family immediately knew something was terribly wrong and set out to search for her. On April 14, 2001, 6 weeks after Rachel had disappeared, her body was discovered 15 miles away in a ravine in Breezy Point. The medical examiner confirmed that Rachel had passed away due to asphyxia, and the hunt for her killer was on. Unfortunately, the Cass County Sheriff's Office had very few leads to work with. They spoke to everyone who shopped at Ultimate Liquors that evening and were able to eliminate them all. Rachel was not said to have had any known enemies, and investigators believe that someone from Pine River or the surrounding community is responsible. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension at 651-793-7000. Number 3. In August of 2014, 25-year-old Danielle Marie Rodowski was set to appear before a grand jury, not as the accused, but as a confidential informant. 2 years prior, Danielle and her boyfriend at the time, Hassan Woods, had landed themselves federal convictions for conspiring to transport illicit substances throughout Pennsylvania. In exchange for a lighter sentence, Danielle agreed to testify before the courts, but before that could happen, she would mysteriously vanish. According to Danielle's family, the last contact they had with her came on March 19, 2014, when she made a post on Facebook. Her disappearance wasn't noticed until she failed to appear at her hearing in August. It would take over a year before Danielle was reported missing by her family in April of 2015, and the search was officially underway. Many have suggested that Danielle went on the run to evade authorities, but there is concern that Danielle's life may be in danger. It's unknown how many other defendants she was set to testify against, and this action may have cost her her life. If still alive today, Danielle would be 34 years old. Anyone with information is asked to contact Trooper Carolyn Rodowski of the Pennsylvania State Police at 570-697-2000, quoting case number PA20298-498. Number 2. Atlantic City, New Jersey has a prominent reputation, which isn't always a positive one. For many decades, Atlantic City was a place for people to relax and let their hair down, and it quickly became a popular holiday destination for many Americans. Sadly, over time, those looking to set up businesses overtook the jovial and peaceful city. The iconic Atlantic City was now overgrown and filthy, filled with criminals who were much the same. Crime was a regular part of life in Atlantic City, but one incident in 2006 would change all of that. On November 20th, 2006, two women were walking behind the Golden Key Motel when they saw something in a water runoff. As they drew closer, they recoiled in horror as they realized it was the body of an adult female. The two women ran to the nearest phone, and within minutes, the Atlantic City Police Department were at the scene. Investigators would later determine that the body discovered belonged to 35-year-old Kim Raffo, a street worker who suffered from substance abuse. Officers surveyed the crime scene, and just feet away, they made another troubling discovery: the bodies of three more women. They lay just 60 feet apart and were fully clothed, save for their socks and shoes. Officers with the Atlantic City Police knew that this was likely the work of a serial killer and radioed for backup. It was later determined that the three bodies belonged to 42-year-old Barbara Brighter, a street worker who'd been reported missing in October of 2006, 23-year-old Tracy Ann Roberts, a street worker who suffered from substance abuse, and 20-year-old Molly Jean Diltz. Diltz was the only victim that didn't partake in substances or street work. All four of the bodies were in different states of decomposition, confirming to investigators that they had lost their lives at different times. So how had their bodies remained undiscovered? Weeks after the discovery hit the headlines, the Atlantic City Police Department got its first big break in the case. The girlfriend of 41-year-old Terry Olson told detectives that he'd taken four women's lives. Terry lived at the Golden Key Motel for free in exchange for his services as a handyman and repairman. Investigators dove into this lead, but DNA proved that Olson was not responsible. Another man, Eldred Raymond Burchell, who frequently visited street workers, told a working girl that he was the riverman and was responsible for the crimes. But this also was never proven to be true. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office at 609-909-7800 or Crime Stoppers at 1-800-658-8477. Number 1. 22-year-old Dawn Marie Miller was last seen leaving the Academy Apartments in Bellefonte, Pennsylvania on October 24, 1992, with her boyfriend Greg and another man. According to reports, Greg, Dawn, and the other man left in an old brown and maroon 1982 Datsun 210, headed for Dawn's mother's apartment in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Greg told investigators that they were headed to Dawn's mother's apartment to collect some clothes, but Dawn has never been seen or heard from again. In mid-1992, Dawn and her mother got into an argument, leading to Dawn walking out of their shared apartment. Following this argument, Dawn headed straight for her boyfriend's home and continued to live with him. Dawn's mother didn't like Greg and was worried that her daughter was being taken advantage of. Dawn has learning disabilities, and she was described as extremely trusting and a naive young woman. Her mother was also worried that Dawn had begun using substances under the watchful eye of her boyfriend. Weeks passed without contact, and Dawn's mother became concerned. Fox 43 reported that she'd tried to alert the Williamsport Police Department of her daughter's disappearance, but they were uninterested. When the case was reviewed in 2003, Dawn's case file had no reference photographs of her and was a mere 2.5 pages long. It took until November of 1992 for Dawn to be reported missing, by which time crucial evidence had already been lost or destroyed. Greg Emmel claimed to have no information about what happened to Dawn, and also denied harming her in a 2008 interview. Detective Ken Maines, who conducted the interview, told Fox 43 that Greg's demeanor changed when he brought up Dawn's name, and he became uncomfortable and terrified. Without physical evidence or a confession, the Williamsport police were forced to let Greg Emmel go. Months after the fateful interview, Greg's nephew came forward with a damning claim that he'd been the one with Dawn and Greg on the evening she disappeared. He also claimed to have helped his uncle bury Dawn's body and even took investigators to the spot. A full search was conducted, but no sign of Dawn has ever been found. Greg passed away in 2008, taking any information with him to the grave. Since his initial claim, Greg Emmel's nephew has withdrawn his support and cooperation with the Williamsport Police Department. If alive today, Dawn Marie Miller would be 52 years old. Dawn is described as a white female with dark hair, brown eyes, 5'4" to 5'6", and 100 to 105 pounds. Her front teeth are slightly overlapped and she speaks with a speech impediment. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Lycoming County District Attorney's Office at 570-327-6708, quoting case number 9230304. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.